Be useful for once. That was the sentence my wife chose to say to me in the middle of a five-star hotel lobby, loud enough for the marble walls to carry it, sharp enough to make a few heads turn, and casual enough that it sounded like she'd been thinking it for a long time. I didn't answer her. I didn't even look at her right away. I just stood there in a pressed valet uniform that wasn't really mine, feeling the weight of a moment that most people would call humiliation but to me felt like confirmation. Olivia adjusted the sleeve of her coat like nothing unusual had just happened, her fingers resting lightly on Ryan Carter's arm, the same way they used to rest on mine back when gestures meant something. Ryan smirked, the kind of smile that comes easy when a man thinks he understands the room, and without hesitation he tossed me the keys to his car like I was exactly what I looked like, a service worker standing in his way. The keys spun once in the air before landing in my palm, cold, precise, deliberate. Around us, the lobby moved in slow motion, heels clicking against polished floors, glasses clinking somewhere near the bar, a quiet hum of money and status and conversations that didn't include me. Or at least, that's what they believed. I let the silence stretch just a second longer than normal, just enough to feel it settle into the space between us. Olivia didn't flinch. That was the part that mattered. Not the words, not the man beside her, not even the act itself. It was the ease. The comfort. Like asking me to park another man's car was no different than asking me to grab groceries on the way home. I nodded once, slow, controlled, the kind of movement that doesn't invite questions. Of course, I said, my voice even, steady, exactly what they expected. Ryan chuckled under his breath like he just confirmed a theory about me, and Olivia gave him a look that said, "See, I told you." That look didn't hurt. Not anymore. Because pain requires surprise, and I had run out of that a long time ago. I turned toward the entrance, the glass doors reflecting a version of me they thought they understood, a man reduced to a uniform, a role, a background detail. In someone else's story. But reflections are funny like that. They only show what you're standing in front of. As I walked past the front desk, I caught a flicker of movement, the concierge straightening slightly, his eyes meeting mine for half a second too long, a subtle shift most people wouldn't notice. I didn't react. Not yet. Outside, the evening air carried that crisp edge of early fall, cool enough to wake you up but not enough to make you uncomfortable. I stepped toward the car, Ryan's car, sleek, expensive, temporary, just like his place in this story. I ran my fingers over the key fob, feeling the weight again, not of the metal, but of everything that had led to this exact moment. They thought this was the lowest point. They thought this was where I realized what I'd become. But standing there under the soft glow of the hotel lights, I realized something else entirely. This wasn't humiliation. This was alignment. Because when people finally show you exactly who they are, you don't interrupt them. You let them finish. And then you decide what to do next. I pressed the unlock button and the car responded instantly, headlights flashing once like a quiet acknowledgement, the kind of response you expect when something is programmed to obey without question. For a second, I just stood there with the driver door open, not getting in, not moving, letting the moment stretch longer than it should have. Inside the lobby, through the glass, I could still see them. Olivia leaned slightly toward Ryan, laughing at something he said, her posture relaxed, effortless, like she had already rewritten the story of her life and I was just a detail she had edited out. That used to bother me. The way she could switch off entire chapters like they never mattered. But now it felt different. Cleaner. Like watching a play when you already know the ending. I slid into the driver's seat but did not start the engine. Instead, I rested my hands lightly on the steering wheel, feeling the smooth leather under my palms, and let my eyes drift back toward the entrance. The valet stand sat just to the right of the doors, a polished counter, 2 young attendants, both new, both trying a little too hard to look like they belonged here. One of them glanced at me, then quickly looked away, like he was unsure if he was supposed to recognize me or ignore me. That hesitation told me everything I needed to know. Systems reveal themselves in moments like that, not during inspections, not in reports, but in small human reactions that cannot be trained out. I exhaled slowly and checked my watch, not because I needed the time, but because it grounded the rhythm of what came next. 10 minutes. That was all it ever took for things to shift. I stepped back out of the car, leaving the door open behind me, and walked around the front instead of heading toward the parking lane. That was the first deviation. Subtle, but intentional. Inside, the temperature dropped a few degrees, that controlled, expensive cool that hotels used to signal comfort and control at the same time. My shoes echoed against the marble, steady, unhurried. I could feel eyes tracking me now, not because I had done anything obvious, but because people sense when someone is not playing their assigned role anymore. Olivia noticed first. Her smile paused just a fraction, not enough for Ryan to catch, but enough for me. Good. I stopped a few feet from them, still holding the keys. Ryan raised an eyebrow, amused, like I had forgotten a step in a simple task. Problem? He asked, his tone light, dismissive. I looked at him, then at Olivia, and for a moment I said nothing at all. Silence is uncomfortable when people expect compliance. It stretches, it presses, it forces them to fill it. Olivia crossed her arms slightly, impatience creeping in. Ethan, just park it, she said, her voice lower now, edged with annoyance instead of performance. That was when I let the smallest shift happen. Not in my posture. Not in my expression. In my focus. I turned my head slightly toward the front desk and met the eyes of the concierge again. This time, I did not look away. I held it. Just long enough. Recognition moved across his face like a shadow catching light. Subtle. Controlled. But real. I gave a single nod. Not to him as an employee, but as someone acknowledging a signal. Then I looked back at the two of them. Still calm, still steady, the keys resting loosely in my hand. I will, I said, my voice even, almost quiet. In a minute. And for the first time that night, something in the room shifted in a way they could not explain. Ryan let out a short laugh, the kind that tries to fill a gap it does not understand, and he glanced at Olivia like this was still a joke he was in control of. In a minute? He repeated, tilting his head slightly, his confidence still intact but now carrying a trace of irritation underneath. Olivia did not laugh this time. Her eyes stayed on me, sharper now, searching for something that had not been there before, or maybe something she had simply never noticed. Ethan, do not make this awkward, she said, her voice tight, controlled, the performance cracking just enough to show the edge beneath it. I could feel the attention around us shifting, subtle but undeniable, conversations nearby lowering in volume, a few guests glancing over with polite curiosity, the kind that pretends not to watch but never looks away. I did not respond immediately. Instead, I turned slightly, just enough for my voice to carry toward the front desk without raising it. Daniel, I said, calm, measured, like I was continuing a conversation that had started long before this moment. There was a pause, barely a second, but in that second everything changed. The man behind the desk straightened instantly, his posture snapping into something far more formal than before, and he stepped out from behind the counter with a speed that did not match the relaxed atmosphere of the lobby. Yes, sir, he answered, the word landing heavier than anything else that had been said so far. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just precise. Ryan blinked, confused, his smile faltering as he looked between me and Daniel, trying to piece together a context that no longer fit the version of the night he thought he understood. Olivia's expression shifted more slowly, but deeper. Recognition does not always arrive as a sudden shock. Sometimes it seeps in, quiet and cold, until there is no room left for denial. I held Ryan's keys loosely between my fingers and extended my hand, not toward the valet stand, but toward Daniel. Hold on to these for a moment, I said, my tone unchanged, steady as ever. Daniel stepped forward without hesitation and took the keys carefully, like they carried more weight than metal and plastic ever should. Of course, sir, he replied, his voice respectful, controlled, and unmistakably deferential. The word echoed differently this time. Not as a courtesy. As a position. I watched Ryan's posture shift, his shoulders tightening slightly, his confidence searching for ground that was no longer there. "What is this?" he asked, a hint of impatience creeping into his voice now, no longer amused, no longer certain. I met his eyes, calm, unhurried, giving him just enough attention to acknowledge the question without answering it. Because answers, when given too early, ruin everything. Olivia took a small step forward, her voice lower now, almost cautious. "Ethan, what are you doing?" she asked, and for the first time that night, there was no performance in it. Just uncertainty. I let the silence settle again, heavier this time, pressing into the space between us, forcing them to stand inside it. Then I shifted my attention fully to Daniel. "I want a full internal review started immediately," I said, my voice still even, but carrying something else now, something that did not need to be explained. "Guest access, valet authorization, and staff compliance protocols." Daniel nodded once, already pulling a small tablet from his pocket, his movements efficient, practiced. "Right away, sir," he answered, no hesitation, no questions. Around us, the atmosphere changed completely. Not loud. Not chaotic. Just different. Like a room that suddenly realizes it has been misreading the person standing in the center of it. I looked back at Olivia and Ryan, both of them still trying to understand how a simple request had turned into something else entirely, and I spoke again, just as calmly as before. "You asked me to be useful," I said quietly. "So I am starting with the system." The word system did not land the way they expected it to. It did not sound emotional, it did not sound reactive, and that was exactly why it carried weight. Ryan let out a small scoff. But it came a fraction too late, like he was trying to recover timing that had already slipped away. "You are joking, right?" he said, glancing around as if someone else in the room might confirm it for him, but no one did. People were still watching, not openly, but enough. Olivia did not speak right away. Her eyes stayed locked on Daniel, then on the tablet in his hands, then back to me, as if she was trying to reconstruct something she should have known but never asked about. "Ethan," she said again, softer this time, more careful. "What is going on?" I looked at her, really looked at her, not with anger, not with disappointment, just clarity. "What is going on?" I repeated, letting the words settle before continuing. "Is that you brought someone into a place you do not understand, and you assumed the rules were yours to decide." Daniel shifted slightly beside me, already tapping through internal systems, his expression focused, professional, but there was tension in his posture now, the kind that comes from knowing this is no longer routine. "Sir," he said quietly, angling the screen just enough for me to see, "there is no registered guest under that name for tonight." Ryan's expression tightened immediately. "That is because I have a reservation under a different name," he said quickly, the confidence in his voice trying to reassert itself, but now it sounded defensive instead of assured. Daniel did not look at him. He kept his eyes on me. "Would you like me to verify all associated bookings?" he asked. I gave a small nod. "Everything," I said. One word. Clear. Complete. Olivia took a step closer now, her voice dropping further, almost like she did not want anyone else to hear. "Ethan, stop this," she said, and there it was, not authority, not confidence, but concern. Not for me. For herself. I did not raise my voice. I did not move any closer. "You asked me to act like I belonged in the background," I said evenly. "You should have made sure that was true." The silence that followed was different from before. It was no longer uncomfortable. It was heavy. Deliberate. The kind of silence that forces people to confront what they have overlooked. Daniel's fingers moved quickly across the screen, pulling records, cross-checking entries, his efficiency now sharpened by urgency. "Sir," he said after a moment, his tone tightening slightly, "there are discrepancies." Ryan let out a breath that was half laugh, half frustration. "This is ridiculous," he said, shaking his head. "It is a hotel, not a courtroom." I looked at him calmly. "That depends on what you bring into it," I replied. Olivia's composure cracked just enough for it to show. not outwardly dramatic, but in the way her shoulders shifted, and the way her hand moved from her side to her wrist, a small, unconscious gesture that used to mean she felt off balance. I had seen it before. Just not like this. "Ethan, we can talk about this later," she said quickly, trying to redirect, trying to move the moment somewhere private where control could be rebuilt. I shook my head once. "No," I said quietly. "This is where it matters." Daniel stepped slightly closer, lowering his voice, but not enough to hide it completely. "Sir, the vehicle registration linked to these keys does not match any active guest profile, and there is a flagged note in the system." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Flagged for what?" he demanded, his tone sharper now, the confidence gone, replaced by irritation that bordered on unease. Daniel hesitated for the first time, then looked to me. I held his gaze for a second, then gave a slight nod. "Read it," I said. And just like that, the moment shifted again, from uncertainty to exposure, and this time, there was no way to step back from it. Daniel did not rush. That was the first thing I noticed. Even under pressure, even with eyes on him, he kept his movements controlled, deliberate, like he understood that speed would only make this look messy. He glanced once at the screen, then back at me, waiting for confirmation that I wanted this said out loud, in front of everyone who was now quietly paying attention whether they admitted it or not. I gave him a slight nod. That was enough. "The account associated with this vehicle," Daniel began, his voice steady but lower now, measured carefully, "has a prior internal flag for policy violations, including unauthorized access to restricted guest areas and previous removal from property under management discretion." The words landed clean. No drama. No exaggeration. Just facts. Ryan's reaction was immediate. "That is not accurate," he said quickly, his tone rising just enough to betray the shift in his control. "You have the wrong person." But Daniel did not look at him. He stayed focused on me, because in this moment, that was the only direction that mattered. The system cross-references identification, payment methods, and prior incident reports. Daniel continued, not defensive, not aggressive, just precise. "The match is confirmed." Olivia's breath caught slightly. It was subtle, but I heard it. Not because it was loud, but because everything else had gone so quiet. She turned toward Ryan, her expression searching his face now instead of defending him. "Ryan?" she asked, and for the first time that night, his name did not sound confident when she said it. It sounded uncertain. He shook his head immediately. "This is a misunderstanding," he said, his voice tightening, trying to regain ground that was already gone. "These systems make mistakes all the time." I watched him for a moment, not interrupting, not correcting, just letting him fill the silence with explanations that no longer carried weight. Then I spoke calm as before. "They do," I said. "But not like this." Olivia looked back at me, her eyes sharper now, but not with anger. With realization. Slow. Unavoidable. "You knew," she said quietly. It was not a question. I held her gaze for a second, then answered just as quietly. "I knew enough," I said. That was all it took. Her posture shifted again, the last pieces of certainty slipping away as she started connecting moments that had not made sense before. The way I had not reacted earlier. The way Daniel had responded. The way the room had changed without anyone raising their voice. Ryan took a step forward, frustration now replacing confidence completely. "Look, whatever this is, it has nothing to do with me being here tonight," he said, his words coming faster now, less controlled. "We are guests. We are allowed to be here." I tilted my head slightly. Considering him, not dismissing, not engaging, just observing. "Guests follow rules," I said evenly. "And access is granted based on trust." Daniel shifted beside me again, scrolling further through the records. "There is also a note regarding use of an alias for booking purposes," he added carefully, his tone still professional, but now carrying a weight that could not be ignored. Ryan's jaw tightened again, his silence this time saying more than his words had. Olivia looked between us, then back at him, her voice barely above a whisper. Why would you need an alias? She asked. No accusation. Just confusion. That was the moment everything settled. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quietly falling into place. I exhaled slowly, feeling the tension in the room shift from confusion to clarity. Because some people do not enter places honestly, I said, my voice steady, controlled, and final in a way that did not need to be raised. Olivia did not respond. She just stood there, looking at him, and then at me, realizing that the story she had been standing inside was not the one she thought she was telling. And for the first time that night, no one laughed. Ryan did not answer her question. Not right away. That was the second thing that mattered. Because people who have nothing to hide do not pause like that. They respond quickly, instinctively, filling the space before doubt has a chance to grow. But Ryan hesitated, just long enough for Olivia to notice, just long enough for the silence to deepen again. It is just a business thing, he said finally, his tone forced back into something controlled, but it did not land the same way anymore. You know how it is. Privacy. Clients. Nothing unusual. Olivia did not nod this time. She did not defend him. She just watched him, her expression no longer confident, no longer aligned with his, but separate now, evaluating. That shift was quiet, but it was complete. I let it happen. I did not interrupt it. Because moments like this do not need pressure. They unfold on their own when the truth has enough space. Daniel cleared his throat softly beside me, still holding the tablet, still focused. There is also a restriction note. Regarding future access, he added carefully. This property and all affiliated locations. Ryan's eyes snapped toward him. What does that mean? He asked, sharper now, the edge in his voice no longer hidden. Daniel did not respond to him directly. He looked at me again. Waiting. Always waiting. I gave a small nod. That was enough. It means access is conditional, Daniel said, turning slightly toward Ryan now, but still measured, still professional. And in some cases, denied? Ryan let out a breath through his nose, frustration rising faster now. Denied? Based on what? He pressed. I answered that one. Based on patterns, I said calmly. Behavior. History. Decisions that suggest a lack of respect for the space you are entering. Olivia looked at me again, her voice quieter than before, but clearer. Ethan, why are you the one explaining this? She asked. That question hung in the air longer than anything else that had been said. Because this time, it was not about Ryan. It was about me. About the part of the story she had never bothered to look at closely. I met her eyes steady, unhurried. Because this is my responsibility, I said. Simple. Direct. Ryan shook his head, almost laughing again, but there was no confidence behind it now. You are a valet, he said, like repeating it would make it true again. You do not decide who belongs here. I did not correct him immediately. I let the statement sit there, let it echo just long enough for the contrast to build. Then I reached up slowly and adjusted the cuff of my sleeve, the same motion Olivia had made earlier, but this time it was not about appearance. It was about control. No, I said quietly. I decide how it is run. Daniel lowered his gaze slightly, not out of discomfort, but respect, the kind that acknowledges a line has been drawn clearly. Olivia's breath caught again, deeper this time, the realization no longer forming, but landing. What are you saying? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper now. I held her gaze for a second longer than before. I am saying you never asked the right questions, I replied. Around us, the room felt different again, not because anything loud had happened, but because the truth had moved from implication to presence. Ryan took a step back this time, not forward, his posture shifting in a way he could not fully control. This is insane, he muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. But it was not insane. It was precise. Controlled. exactly where it had been heading from the moment he tossed me those keys. I exhaled slowly, feeling the final pieces settle into place. You came here thinking this was just another place, I said, my voice calm, measured. You were wrong. And this time, no one questioned it. No one spoke for a few seconds after that. Not because they did not have anything to say, but because they were all trying to understand what had just been said without fully accepting it. Ryan was the first to break. You are bluffing, he said, but there was no conviction behind it, just resistance, the kind that shows up when reality does not match expectation. This is some kind of act. You are trying to impress her. He gestured toward Olivia, but she did not react. She was still looking at me, her expression no longer questioning, but searching, like she was replaying every moment we had shared and realizing how much she had never actually seen. I did not argue with Ryan. I did not correct him. Instead, I turned slightly toward Daniel again. Pull the ownership structure, I said calmly. Daniel nodded immediately, his fingers moving across the tablet with practiced speed, navigating layers that most employees never even knew existed. Yes, sir, he replied, his tone consistent, respectful, certain. Ryan let out a short laugh again, louder this time, trying to pull the moment back into something he could control. Ownership structure? He repeated. You hear yourself? But no one else laughed. The room had already moved past that point. Olivia took a slow step closer to me, her voice quieter now, but steadier. Ethan, answer me directly, she said. What are you to this place? That question landed exactly where it needed to. Clear. Focused. Impossible to avoid. I looked at her, not with hesitation at all, just a measured pause, the kind that gives weight to what comes next. Then I answered. I am the reason it exists the way it does, I said simply. No emphasis. No raised voice. Just truth. Daniel turned the tablet slightly, angling the screen so that both Olivia and Ryan could see it now. On it, lines of structure, names, entities, trusts, and at the top, the one detail that mattered. Cole Holdings. The name sat there without decoration, without explanation, but it did not need either. Olivia's eyes moved across the screen slowly, reading, processing, connecting. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. Ryan leaned in, his confidence finally cracking in a way he could not hide anymore. That does not mean anything, he said quickly, but even he sounded like he did not believe it. People invest. That does not make you. I cut him off, not by raising my voice, but by speaking at all. Primary controlling interest, I said calmly, finishing the sentence he could not. Silence followed again, heavier this time, final in a way that left no room for interpretation. Olivia's shoulders dropped slightly, the last layer of assumptions slipping away. You never told me, she said, her voice soft, almost distant, like she was speaking more to herself than to me. I held her gaze. You never asked? I replied. That was the truth. Clean. Undeniable. Ryan took a step back again, his posture no longer relaxed, no longer confident, just uncertain. This is not relevant, he said, but the words felt empty now, like they were said out of habit rather than belief. I looked at him for a moment, then shook my head slightly. It is the only thing that is relevant, I said. Daniel straightened beside me, closing out the screen and holding the tablet at his side again, waiting for the next instruction, the next decision. Around us, the hotel continued its quiet rhythm, but the energy had shifted completely. What had started as a moment of casual humiliation had turned into something else entirely. Something controlled. Something deliberate. Something that had been set in motion long before any of them realized it. I exhaled slowly, feeling the clarity settle fully now. You wanted to know what I am doing, I said, looking at Olivia again. I am finishing what I started. And this time, there was no confusion left in the room, only the weight of what came next. The words settled into the room with a kind of finality that did not need to be repeated. No one moved right away. Even the background noise of the lobby seemed to pull back, like the space itself understood that something had shifted beyond repair. Olivia stood there, still processing, her eyes no longer searching for answers but confronting them, one by one, as they surfaced whether she wanted them to or not. Ryan, on the other hand, was still trying to fight it. Not directly. Not openly. But in the way he held himself, the slight tension in his jaw, the way his eyes kept moving, looking for an exit that did not involve walking away. "So what now?" he asked, his tone forced into something casual, but it did not land. It could not land. Not anymore. I looked at him for a moment, not with anger, not with satisfaction, just clarity. "No," I said calmly. "We correct what should not have happened in the first place." Daniel shifted slightly beside me, already anticipating the direction this was going. He did not ask what to do. He waited. That was the difference. I turned my attention to him fully. "Revoke access for the account linked to that vehicle," I said, my voice steady, controlled. "Across all properties. Effective immediately." Daniel nodded once. "Understood, sir," he replied without hesitation, his fingers already moving again across the tablet, executing the instruction with the same precision he had shown all night. Ryan took a step forward, his composure finally slipping into something more direct. "You cannot do that," he said, his voice sharper now, no longer controlled. "You do not get to just decide." I did not raise my voice. I did not interrupt him aggressively. I simply spoke. "I already did," I said. That was enough. The certainty in the statement cut through whatever argument he was trying to build. He stopped mid-sentence, his frustration hanging in the air without direction. Olivia looked between us, then back at Daniel, watching the screen, watching the process unfold in real time. "Is that final?" she asked quietly. Daniel glanced up briefly, then back down. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "The restriction is now active across all affiliated locations." The word active seemed to land harder than anything else. Because it was not a discussion. It was not a threat. It was already done. Ryan exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair, the confidence he had carried into the building completely gone now. "This is insane," he muttered again, but this time it sounded different. Not like disbelief. Like realization. I let a moment pass before speaking again, not to him, but to Olivia. "You brought him into a space built on trust," I said calmly. "And you assumed that trust would extend automatically." She did not respond right away. Her eyes dropped for a second, then lifted back to mine. "I did not know," she said, her voice quieter than it had been all night. I nodded slightly. "That is the problem," I replied. "No accusation? Just truth." Daniel stepped back half a pace, his task complete, returning to a neutral position but still attentive, still present. Around us, the lobby began to breathe again, the quiet tension slowly dissolving into movement, conversations picking back up, but softer now, more aware. Ryan looked toward the entrance, then back at Olivia, like he was waiting for something from her, some kind of defense, some kind of alignment. But it did not come. She stayed where she was, her posture no longer aligned with his, her presence separate now. I reached out and took the valet gloves off slowly, one finger at a time, the motion deliberate, controlled. Then I placed them on the counter beside me, not as a gesture of rejection, but as a statement of completion. "This is where it ends," I said quietly. And this time, no one argued. I did not rush to leave. That was the last thing I needed to do. Moments like this do not end with movement. They end with understanding. I let the silence sit one final time, not heavy now, not tense, but clear, like the air after a storm has already passed. Olivia stood across from me, her posture no longer defensive, no longer distant, just still. She looked different, not because anything about her had changed, but because the version of her I had been standing next to all this time had finally been revealed without distraction. "Ethan," she said softly, my name sounding unfamiliar in her voice now, like she was hearing it for the first time in a different context. I met her eyes, steady as before, but there was no edge left in it, no need for it. I did not know, she repeated, quieter now, and this time it was not a defense. It was a realization. I nodded once, not to agree, not to comfort, just to acknowledge that she had finally said something true. You did not look, I replied. Not harsh. Not accusing. Just precise. Ryan shifted behind her, uncertain now, his presence reduced to something smaller than it had been when he first walked in. He glanced toward the exit again, then back at Olivia, waiting for direction that was never going to come. That was the part people misunderstand. It is not the moment you lose control that defines you. It is the moment you realize you never had it. Daniel remained where he was, quiet, composed, already returning to the rhythm of the hotel, because for him, the system had corrected itself. For me, it had revealed itself. I reached for nothing else. No phone. No keys. No explanation. There was nothing left to manage. This was never about the car, I said, my voice low, even, carrying just enough to reach them without drawing attention from the rest of the room. Olivia's eyes stayed on mine, absorbing each word like it mattered now in a way it never had before. It was about what you thought I was, I continued, and what you believed you could do because of that. She swallowed slightly, her expression tightening for just a second before settling again. I was wrong, she said. 3 words. Simple. Late. Honest. I held her gaze for a moment longer, then shook my head once. No, I said quietly. You were accurate. For as long as I allowed it. That was the final shift. Not power. Not revenge. Just clarity. I stepped past her then, not brushing against her, not forcing space, just moving forward like I had already decided where I was going long before tonight. The marble floor reflected the same image as before, but it did not look the same anymore. Reflections never do. Once you understand what you are looking at. As I walked toward the exit, I heard nothing behind me. No arguments. No apologies. No footsteps following. Just silence. The kind that means everything that needed to be said already has been. The doors opened automatically as I approached, the cool night air meeting me without resistance, clean, steady, real. I stepped outside without looking back. Because some moments are not meant to be revisited. They are meant to be understood once and left exactly where they happened. And as the doors closed behind me, sealing that version of the night inside, one thought settled in with absolute certainty. They did not humiliate me. They revealed themselves. And that was all I needed.